Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Sermon with Hyde Park United Methodist Church in Tampa, Florida. I'm Matt Hotho, the Director of Production and Online Engagement.
And I'm Magrey deVega, the Senior Pastor.
So Magrey, you just finished preaching a sermon based on Romans 12, which
Yes.
is a passage of a letter that Paul wrote to a church in Rome.
Yep.
And he's telling the people, he's kind of making a shift in his letter. You kind of laid that out in your sermon, but for us again, tell me, what's that shift that Paul's making in the letter at that point?
It's the most brilliant, logical, intellectual argument for the Christian faith that Paul writes in any of his letters for the first 11 chapters. And it's almost like there's a shift in his tone where he says, okay, now that I've explained to you what to believe, let's talk about how to live.
Yeah.
And that's an important shift for Paul and an important shift for all of us.
There's two words that just popped into my head right there that are complementary, and that's orthodoxy
Yes.
and orthopraxy.
Correct. Beautiful.
I love those words. Can you describe them for?
Yeah, orthodoxy. Ortho is right, so like an orthopedist or any kind of doctor where ortho is involved.
Sure.
Orthodontist is correcting anything that's structurally wrong. So ortho means right. In the case of orthodoxy, doxis actually does not mean belief. Doxy, like doxology, actually means praise. So the word orthodoxy means that we praise God with right belief.
Okay.
With the right posture of our mind. So, but it's usually associated with proper doctrine. So
Sure.
Orthodoxy. Orthopraxy, praxy related to the word practical or practicum or practice, is right practice. And both of those things are important, not just right belief, but also right action, all of which contributes to right praise.
And so the shift that Paul's making in chapter 12 is from talking about orthodoxy,
Right.
in some ways,
Right.
to now orthopraxis.
Right.
What do we do with this stuff we believe?
And it's a reminder that Paul is always after the communal aspect of the Christian faith. As much as we might look at Christian belief as a singular, solo, private thing, it's always in the context of relationships. And so what's hard and what's important about Romans 12 is that it reminds us that we need to be in right relationship with other people, which, by the way, is not the first time that someone in the Bible had talked about that. You can probably go all the way back to the Hebrew Bible to talk about the importance of proper communal living, probably all the way back to the Torah.
Yeah, so I'll start us in the Torah, and then you can take us maybe to the prophets.
You can tell by the way I set that up that I want him to talk about Torah, not me, because that's your wheelhouse.
Yeah, so there's this fun book, if you get that far in the Bible, so Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Leviticus is this third book in the Bible. And it is often misunderstood because it starts with just right out the gate with how do we sacrifice animals, right? And why do we need that? I mean, what does that matter? Well, if you think about an ancient culture like that, in a culture of 4,000 years ago, it would have been like, okay, I pray to this God, and if I pray to this God, maybe something good will happen. But there was no system. You didn't know what was going to happen when you prayed to the gods, and you always wondered, if something's not right, is God mad at me?
Right.
Leviticus was the first time that someone put it all down there that was like, actually, God just wants a right relationship with you. And these are the steps to get that relationship. It's not to manipulate God, but it's a way to have a step to say, if I wronged God, if I wronged somebody else, there's even a way to say, if I just want to celebrate the community that I have, there's a sacrifice for that. There's even a sacrifice for, this is where it's really cool. There's actually a sacrifice for, well, I don't have the means to sacrifice a ram. So there's actually a sacrifice for if you can't afford a ram,
Right.
you can sacrifice a turtle dove.
Right.
What if I can't afford a turtle dove?
Right.
You can sacrifice a grain offering. So it's just this system that is fully communal to involve everybody, and that everybody has an opportunity to participate in it, to make right with God and with the other people in their community.
And what a liberating idea that must have been for the Hebrew people and for us even today, to know that there are things that we can do to make things right, that this is literally a practice that we can follow to reconcile ourselves with God and others.
Yeah, and so I think where it comes to Romans 12 and what we've been talking about with orthodoxy and orthopraxis is this idea that when Paul says in 12:1, present your bodies as a holy and living sacrifice, pleasing unto the Lord. What really caught me there is that line, pleasing unto the Lord, because every time you would do a sacrifice in Leviticus, there was this line that said, and the scent of the aroma of the sacrifice shall be a pleasing aroma unto the Lord.
Sure.
Right? So Paul is kind of getting at this ancient idea here of when we make sacrifices, it's pleasing to God, but you got to present yourselves as a community, as a pleasing sacrifice unto the Lord. And the way you do that isn't with the blood of goats and bulls, but with your actions.
It reminds me of other Pauline texts where he talks about, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, that the aroma, I think the line is the aroma of Christ may be sensed by others around you. Definitely that sensual, incense, aromatic kind of idea that goes all the way back to Levitical laws.
Yeah. So you don't have to sacrifice bulls and goats. It is what you do that makes a difference. So now let's take it into the prophets.
Yeah, so there's this interesting dialogue that's going on all throughout the Hebrew Bible where eventually the prophets come along. If you've made it past Leviticus, good luck getting through the prophets, but it's well worth reading because there's prophetic commentary on those Levitical laws saying, yeah, it's good to keep performing those sacrificial rituals, but they don't use this metaphor, but lest you think that God is just a vending machine where it's a transactional piece where you just do the right combination of sacrifices, you'll get what you want. But the prophets come along and say, sacrifice is much more than just killing the animals and setting off the aroma. Yeah. It is always, always, always about obedience, what's in your heart. And so you get the fusion of both Levitical and prophetic direction in Romans 12:1. Where you present, and I mean, this is such a beautiful juxtaposition. Paul says, present your bodies as a living sacrifice. Usually when you sacrifice something, you kill it. Paul is saying the sacrifice of your life means living the right way, so that it's not just a performative, transactional thing where you expect God to do what you want God to do. You are obeying God, which is something of a much, much deeper level.
Yeah. Which I think for us today, I think we think about that, and you and I kind of probably see the world in some similar ways, where the way that we think about how to be a living sacrifice in the world has things in it like compassion, like justice, like truth. And even those words, as I say them, I'm picturing somebody in my mind going, well, then he's on this side of the aisle.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's so hard for us today.
Yeah.
To have conversations like that. But that's something that I believe. I think you believe that as well in those ideals.
Yeah.
So then when we think about the idea of empathy, which you brought us towards in this conversation or in your sermon, which is so important, but so hard to have nowadays. One, because we're being told that it's a sign of weakness,
right?
Which I completely disagree with.
Right.
My mother taught me compassion and told me you will be a compassionate young man when you grow up. And I think she just didn't use the word empathy, but that's what I was taught, right? Those are very similar.
Right.
To be told that that's something I shouldn't have, I just could not disagree more.
Right. So I just returned from a few days with the Institute of Preaching, which is a collection of preachers from various states and conferences to talk about the art, the craft, the hard work of preaching. One of the sessions was titled Red and Blue Words, which on the surface should not be words that convey any kind of political or ideological meaning, but because of the current climate, these are words that have been owned, perhaps co-opted, to have more meaning on the right than on the left, among the red states than the blue states. Words like justice, like when you hear the word justice, maybe that conjures up a certain kind of ideological perspective. So among those words now, which is hard to understand and believe, among those words now is the word empathy. And I mentioned that in my sermon, that even it has entered the public space when one prominent public figure said what I said in the sermon, that empathy is a flaw in Western civilization. Even the word empathy has become a red word or blue word, depending on your perspective. And so it's just really, really hard to imagine. That perspective, by the way, and to some degree, that person who said it, is someone I have to work hard to empathize with.
Right.
So if you were to ask me for an example of someone that I'm having a hard time empathizing with, it is a person who is challenging the value of empathy, like him and others.
Yeah, and you're definitely not alone in that. I mean, there's been times I've been on social media and I have friends that I really admire because they're willing to put things out on social media that are balanced, that are fair, and then allow the discussion to go where it will. And there's such difficulty there with being empathetic, with not wanting to fight back. And, it's hard. It's just hard. And I think that any of you listening or watching probably are going, oh my gosh, me too.
Yeah.
It's true. And so I think gosh, now I'm jumping to Philippians. This is not in the text that we talked about today, but have within you the mind of Christ Jesus is what's coming to my head, right? It's by Paul.
Yep.
And it's just the idea of what does the mind of Christ look like in moments like this?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, when you mentioned that text and when you think about the empathy that Christ demonstrated, I am reminded again, I've said this so many times recently because I feel like it's just important, that engagement is not endorsement. Not at one point did Jesus' effort at empathy for a person who was opposed to him say that the other person was correct in their perspective. Jesus always embraced the humanity of the person, acknowledged that they were a child of God. But having empathy doesn't mean that you are saying that their perspective is not causing harm. I mean, if their perspective is causing harm, to have empathy with them simply means that you are hearing their perspective, you are understanding their side, but not necessarily agreeing with them, and acknowledging the commonality of human emotions, that we all have the same longings and fears. Engagement is not endorsement. It does not mean that we have to agree with their perspective if their perspective is causing harm, if it's unjust, if it's not right.
So then do you think there's some truth there in what Atticus Finch was saying in To Kill a Mockingbird of stepping into someone else's skin, trying to see it from the perspective of that person who commented on the Facebook post?
Yeah.
And then just allowing yourself to then, like you do so well, go into a posture of prayer.
Yeah.
Right? God, I am trying. I don't know. What does that look like for you when you pray in situations like that?
The big value of that when I think about Atticus's line to Scout is that he's addressing the tension of the moment, which is not Scout's relationship with her teacher, but Scout's anxiety, her irritation, and helping Scout to learn how to self-regulate. So stepping into someone's skin may or may not change your relationship with that person because that's a tandem enterprise. It takes two to come to that understanding. But empathy helps one self-regulate, which is why I pray. I mean, literally, there are people that I have a hard time empathizing with right now, and I will write their name in my prayer journal every single morning. And whether or not God takes that prayer and changes them or my relationship with them is really beyond my control. I do that for self-regulation.
Okay.
For me to find an outlet to lower my irritation and my level of angst at them and at the situation. And just say, in this moment, I'm doing what I can. And I'm externalizing it here in prayer. And I think that's the value of stepping into someone's skin and walking around in it.
Okay. I think that might be a good place to stop because I think that gives people who are listening to this a practical way to try something this week that might be new for you. It'll be new for me. And that'll be to take a couple of the names that pop up on my Facebook feed in the comments section and try and pray about that.
I mean, Paul said we should.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
Yeah. Gosh, this is tough. Well, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Beyond the Sermon. I realize this is one of the ones where we had more questions than maybe we had answers. Yeah. Sometimes days are like that. Sometimes faith is like that. If you're looking for a community that is willing to be honest about the moments like that, that's the kind of community we are here at Hyde Park. So we'd love for you to go to our Next Steps page and just find out more about us, how you can join us for worship, or find more of our content. So until then, I'm Matt Hotho.
And I'm deVega.
And we'll see you next time.